Jennie and Lisa from BLACKPINK and ENHYPEN were part of the proud K-pop lineup at Coachella 2025. It has become the norm to have K-pop stars perform at major international music events. Now today, we want to talk about K-pop's presence on the global stage and what significance this holds for the K-pop industry. For that, we are now connected to CedarBough Saeji, Assistant Professor at Pusan National University. Hello, Professor Saeji.
Hello, Professor.
Hello, Sua. Hello, Walter.
All right, so K-pop artists made headlines at this year's Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival. First off, what do you think has earned them the attention from the media and audience?
Well, I don't mean to be too cynical, but by adding K-pop artists to the lineup, Coachella can also attract some new audiences that might not have gone to a desert in California. After slowly and successfully adding K-pop performers over the past few festivals, I think Coachella now feels confident that even audiences unfamiliar with K-pop will note the talent, stage presence of K-pop performers. And because it's still hard to see some of these groups in the US or to get those coveted tickets, fans are willing to travel a long distance to see them perform. So the addition of K-pop brings new audiences to the shows and often very enthusiastic audiences demonstrating K-culture, fan chants, light sticks, and that creates an impression on other audiences. So I don't want to say that K-pop performers are the best performers at these festivals, but they are very well rehearsed, very well trained, and they do give it their all.
And Professor Saeji, in the past, we would hear of news that this and that group has made its debut in the US, or that groups like BTS and BLACKPINK have for the first time performed at this and that event. But now K-pop acts are at the center of global music events. So what do you think of this development?
Well, of course, more than anything, I'm just proud of the artists. They've done something that the first generation couldn't even imagine. I absolutely believe that K-pop's upending of global cultural flows, challenging the status quo that only Western pop music is consumed everywhere, is K-pop's most significant contribution to the world of pop music. In the future, we all know global stars can come from anywhere. And K-pop was what proved that stars can come from places other than Western Europe and the United States and Canada. So K-pop had to work really hard to get to this point. The groups that have broken out, the ones that were the first to appear on these famous shows or to be at these famous festivals, those groups relentlessly were promoted by their agencies, but most of all by their fans. It didn't happen because people liked them, but because people loved them passionately and without holding back. And so honestly, it's love that has made K-pop into this global phenomena.
And the fandom power is also very impressive at these international music events. For example, Coachella. Coachella is almost probably one of the most well-known music festivals in the Northern American area, apart from probably Woodstock. And I've also I've been overseas myself and hosted Korean culture events where the fans are singing along to Korean songs, even if they technically don't know Korean. They know the chants, they know the lyrics, they know the dances, they know what to say. You can hear the crowd sing along with these, like you said, lights, banners, etc. What kind of impact does this have on the fan culture, do you think?
Well, I think as much as people still try to belittle fans or belittle fan culture, K-pop fan culture is actually kind of magical. When you're in an audience, I remember being in an audience in LA and all of a sudden everybody's singing in Korean. And that is magic. I was at Taemin's concert on Saturday in Seoul, and it's electrifying. You feel goosebumps being in those audiences, that level of power of these artists to motivate all these people who don't even really know the language to memorize lyrics. You see light sticks and they're bobbing in a sea of light with these excited bodies. I mean, it's wonderful. You know, many aspects of K-pop fan culture are now being applied to non-Korean stars because fans really enjoy this. They enjoy the potency of K-pop fan practices. And these non-Korean entertainment organizations and stars, they can see the sense in adopting these practices. You know, of course, there's also some ways to sell additional merchandise and more music that is also being adopted along with these K-pop practices.
Professor, I almost felt like I am at one of those concerts right now, but magical indeed. When
Yes.
you're in the crowd there, everyone around you singing in Korean.
Yes.
It is magical.
Like I said, when I did host one of the culture events and this small crowd was in front of me and a lot of them were Australian and they knew all the Korean lyrics, I was absolutely mind blown that they knew everything. And you could tell many of them didn't speak Korean, but they knew all the lyrics and the chants. But why do you think the international fans are showing this enthusiastic response to K-pop performances? And what are the appealing factors or what differentiates K-pop stages from, let's say, others?
Well, I don't mean to sound biased, but K-pop really thrives on audience interaction. And so the entire industry and the fan practices have created these standardized practices that we learn. And those practices turn being in an audience into an otherworldly experience. In academic terms, we talk about the creation of something called communitas, where an entire group spontaneously finds themselves focused, breathing as one, held aloft by this music-fueled emotion. And I feel like K-pop is really good at creating that communitas. Actually, in Korean, it's kind of encapsulated by the term shinmyeong, right? So K-pop artists know how to create a feeling of shinmyeong in the audience. And this emotion is unforgettable for audiences, especially if you've never felt that before, if you've never been in a huge group where you felt held, embraced, sharing this similar emotion, like everybody here is feeling what I'm feeling. Can we believe we're seeing this with our eyes? If you have that feeling, you want to have that feeling again. And how else to do it other than going to another live K-pop concert?
And speaking of another live K-pop concert, we're now going to move over to Tecate Pal Norte 2025 because 17 has headlined this big stage, becoming the first K-pop act to perform at this major Latin American musical festival that we're now going to talk about. So many Koreans maybe were not familiar with this specific one, but now because of 17, probably Koreans also are more aware of this Latin American festival. So tell us the significance of what this particular stage holds.
Well, I think 17's show at Tecate Pal Norte demonstrates that K-pop is becoming mainstream in Latin America. You know, reports from the show and uploaded audience video demonstrates that everybody in the audience was familiar with 17. They were familiar with the songs. You know, they were doing the fan chants. They were singing along. And because Latin America is a very important and still growing music market, it really will provide a lot of benefits in the future for K-pop to move into that space. You know, Stray Kids also just toured in Latin America, and they sold 400,000 tickets with shows in 8 different cities. And we have to remember that the cost of a ticket in Latin America is greater compared to a person's average income than it is like when we go to a show in Korea or in the United States or Australia. And so right now, as the sales of physical recordings, which used to be kind of like the bread and butter for so many artists, the sales of physical recordings just continue to go down and down, even though we have fan collection practices. And streaming financially is not very profitable for artists. The emphasis has really shifted towards touring. Like, did you know that SM Entertainment, they did 80 shows in 2022, right at the end of the pandemic sort of influenced time, but they plan to do 400 shows in 2025. So if we can sell out shows, it can bring the cost of a tour down. Whenever these artists have to do a tour internationally, they have to do very complicated visa practices to go to these foreign countries. There's behind the scenes paperwork that can be really exhausting. And then you have to move these large set pieces and really large crews of people who do technical support. And it's all really, really expensive. But the more locations within the same country or within the same continent that they can do on the same tour, kind of like back to back, put the set pieces on a truck and send the truck to the next location, that actually allows them to maximize their earnings while reducing costs and reducing paperwork. So you can really see why opening up this Latin American market, having richer tour opportunities is really important to K-pop right now.
Well, that brings us to our final question now, Professor Saeji. Very briefly, how do you see K-pop's presence on the global music festival stage evolving in the future?
Well, a music festival is supposed to motivate you to buy tickets through the draw of a well-known talent, and then also provide you an experience you can't get from like algorithmic suggestions for what to listen to, right? So I think that mixing K-pop performances with other pop performances, like other hip-hop performances, or in the case of a festival like Head in the Clouds, Asian artists from around the world, this becomes really ideal. People can discover new artists, both by K-pop and non-K-pop listeners. And so expanding overseas market is such a huge focus for the entertainment agencies, and exposing new audiences to K-pop at festivals is a really important strategic move. So I'm confident Korean artists are going to continue to wow the audiences and make new fans through their shows. And here's to many more overseas festivals.
Right. Now, we hope to see more of BLACKPINK, 17, BTS on the big stages, but also many rookie groups as well, because they also these days make some performances at these major stages. So that's a new development as well. But thank you very much, Professor Saeji, for sharing your K-pop insights with us today, as always.
Thank you, Professor.
All right. You guys have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you, Walter. As always, we're going to see you back here tomorrow.
See you soon.